In this video, I'll show you how I take one character reference and create over 100 dynamic variations of him. I change his costume, add props, shift the pose and expression, as well as the lighting, and will turn each one of those variations into ready-to-use assets that we can drag and drop into scenes. This is the first episode in a series where I plan to walk you through the whole process of illustrating a children's book with AI tools, step by step, and from beginning to end. I want to show you what's easy, what's hard, and also the things that can get kind of tedious, so that you understand what it actually takes to finish your project, even if you're brand new to all this AI stuff. This video, being the first step of your project, is so important because consistency is traditionally going to be one of the hardest things to get right if you're using AI. But if you create enough of these assets, just like I'll show you how to do, you'll be ready to put your attention into telling your story instead of fighting against the limitations of these models. If I threw it all at you, the formula might feel overwhelming, so I'm going to break it into chunks. My first focus right now is taking this single reference that I have and turning it into references that are better suited for generating assets the way that I do. The goal being, eventually, I have enough assets to never need to generate him from scratch again. So that you know, our main character's name is Ela, and he's for an actual book I'm helping a client illustrate. Right now, I do only have this one reference that she gave me. It's something my client generated in Midjourney before we got started, and it's based off her actual son. And so, of course, I don't want to disappoint her and lose any of these details that she's chosen, but we are going to need to edit this reference to give ourselves a smarter starting place. My method involves using AI video models to animate the characters and pulling frames from those animations so that I don't have to regenerate the character from scratch for every new pose. But that means I do need this starting frame that I'm going to use to be really well optimized for the video model. I am going to use Midjourney's built-in video model, which is especially great for these hand-drawn looking characters like this, but to get the best results, I want to point out some problems that I noticed with this reference so you know what we're trying to fix. First, I need to have plenty of room on the canvas for my character to move around so that nothing gets chopped off during the animation. So I'll need to zoom out a bit, and I'll switch to a square aspect ratio just because Midjourney was trained on squares and does the best job with them. Second, I need the starting pose and expression to be much more neutral, so that from it, it's easy to animate our character into any pose we may need. For that, I'll try to get his hands out of his pockets and get him facing more forward instead of up into the sky. Third, one reference isn't enough. Midjourney cares about prominence and how much room on the canvas the most important elements take up. If I animate pose, Midjourney is going to focus on how all the limbs are moving, and it's not going to put as much focus on the character's face. It could even get messed up or compressed by the video models. My strategy involves animating pose and expression separately so that we can combine them later on when we can create scenes to get the best quality of both. To get that done, there are two different tools I'm going to use. The first tool is something I talk about a ton. That is the Midjourney Editor. If you're on the Midjourney site, you'll go to the Edit tab. The editor is nice because it's the only place in Midjourney that lets you work directly with an uploaded image, as more than just a reference. Let's start by adjusting the aspect ratio with these handles, or actually this button is a little bit more precise to get a square, and we'll also try to use the eraser brush to take Ela's hands out of his pockets. In the editor, everything that you see is locked in, and everything that you erase gets filled out again when you click Generate. What's useful with all of this locked in is that the context of the image does most of the work for us. Midjourney knows what our character looks like and understands the style from just the pixels that we locked in by erasing. So our prompt can be very simple. A young boy on a white background. You can see the missing bits get created pretty accurately, but unfortunately his hands are still in his pockets. This could be because there's too much context here, right? His arms are sort of leading to where his pockets would be. We could probably improve this and stop the context from implying that his hands are in his pockets by erasing a little bit more. But just to be sure it's going to work, we can also improve the prompt to make the edit more likely to happen too. My general advice for Midjourney Editor prompts is to describe the entire image where the tokens referring to the edit sound as important as possible, as if the edit is already a part of the image and is the most important thing. So if you just say, a boy with his hands out of his pockets, that prompt tokenized would give too much weight in the direction of pockets being a big part of the image. A better prompt doesn't mention pockets at all. Instead, it describes something about the hands as if they were already visible. The simplest thing we could say is like, fingers spread wide. And there you go. Hands are out of his pockets because we've named something about the hands. One of them is bad. Let's erase it and generate one more time. And nice. We do still have that second problem that's a little bit more challenging. If this is the full body starting frame we end up using going forward, every single video is going to start with him looking up to the sky like this. And that's not very natural and not very useful for any of the scenes I need to build for this story. So rather than fighting that tendency with every asset generating video going forward, it's better to fix this upstream now and get a reference pose that's more like how we're going to need him and bring his face down and more forward. So the problem is, in the editor, I can't erase his face for Midjourney to regenerate it because, well, if I erase it, Midjourney will just forget what he looks like and turn him into a whole new person. That's where we jump to our second tool for edits, and this is a somewhat newer technology. There's a new class of image generator that's designed to edit and work with images using the brain from a text model. The most popular of those lately is Nano Banana. Using Nano Banana, or one of its competitors, Seedream 4.0, we can control our character in subtle ways and still have a really high quality character accuracy if we don't change too much at once. So let's try this here. I'm going to jump to OpenArt so we can compare the two models we want to test on this problem. There are a few websites like this that consolidate as many public models as they can. I'm not sponsored by or specifically recommending them, but OpenArt is just what I use right now for testing. What I want to see is if Nano Banana can adjust the angle of his head without losing any character accuracy. So to try that, we'll drag our last result into this spot that says omnireference. What's cool is that for the prompt, these models support writing what is essentially director's note that you would give to the character or artist drawing the character, which is really my favorite way to prompt overall. I'll write here, please change the angle so this young boy character is looking straight ahead in a neutral expression instead of up into the sky. Because it's powered by a text model, it should understand this. I'll generate these. On OpenArt, we can do 1, 2, 3, or 4 variations. I think 2 is great. And to test, I'll just send the same prompt to Seedream 4.0 as well, and we'll get 2 more results from that. Okay, that took 35 seconds. Looking at these, I normally like Nano Banana more, but in this case, it actually seems like Seedream was more character accurate and gave me the best neutral expression. I love this one. We did get a slight yellowish tint added compared to my original reference, but the pose is exactly what I wanted, so I can't complain. Our next challenge is the close-up reference, and because this expression from this image is fine, Nano Banana will be happy to take it as an omni-reference with a prompt like, create a close-up of his face, same outfit. I'll run it twice with Nano Banana and twice with Seedream again, and looking at the results, I think this one from Nano Banana did the best job at staying in style, getting matching details, and giving us a good amount of white space around the character for Midjourney to animate in. So now, we are in a much better place to finally move on to the next chunk of this project, and that is animation. For me, AI video is the most amazing strategy for getting new assets out of my characters while staying highly consistent. It works so well because a video can adjust the pose of our character, give them objects, and move them around in 3D space over the course of many frames. And the best part is every one of those frames is going to be based on the ground truth of what our character looks like. Videos can be hard to rein in, which is why I set up a prompt I use in my custom GPT to streamline the process. So if you're on my website, glibetry.com, the first link at the top of the page takes you to my proven consistent character method. The link to that's also going to be in the description. Each of these code blocks on that page are for using in my GPT to generate prompts for Midjourney. I've written them so that you can continue to talk to ChatGPT like you are that director and get highly optimized Midjourney prompts as a result, without worrying about tags or prompt formats or complicated technical stuff. To animate a reference pose like this, we're going to copy my prompt number 2, bring it to my GPT, the link to that is also right here, and we're going to paste the prompt in along with my references. And then here, down at the bottom, is the only place you should ever have to edit when you're generating these prompts. And this is where you can talk to it like a director. For example, you could say, make a full orbit around my character while he stays still, so that I can see him from every angle. I'll go ahead and fill out this template to get 4 different prompts, and I'll cut right back. So I added 3 more. Number 1 was the full orbit, For number 2, I asked for a walk cycle facing forward. For number 3, I had him turn slightly to the side and then do another walk cycle from hopefully a 3/4 angle. And then for the last one, I got a little more complicated. I asked him to sit down in the grass and then pick up a pink flower. I also gave ChatGPT a little reminder that this is the only one of my 4 images where I want any new elements, just so that it doesn't get confused. If you pause and read these, you can see I'm being pretty specific. I write these as requests for assets describing how I want the character to appear. This is a real story I'm trying to illustrate after all, so I need to write out my whole idea so that ChatGPT doesn't have to guess or leave things vague. I'll go ahead and run this prompt in my GPT, and while that generates, we'll set ourselves up in Midjourney here on the Create tab now. To generate videos instead of images, which you might be used to, you're going to drag your reference into this spot under the prompt bar, where it says Starting Frame. So that it doesn't go away and we can just keep pasting prompts later on, what I'm going to do is I'm going to hit this lock button in the top right. There are also a few settings we can check on here. I really like generating in HD. It just means we get as many pixels as possible out of the native video model. We can always upscale later, but these video models know more about our character than an upscaler does, and will give us better results a higher percentage of the time. It is more expensive in terms of credits, so if you're on a smaller plan, you might want to either just generate 1 or 2 variations of the video, or deal with the low resolution of standard definition. But I'm going to do HD and 4, just so I have the most options and the highest quality. Now, I'll jump to ChatGPT and Midjourney and generate videos for all 4 of the prompts we got. When these are done, we'll look at each video and I'll show you how I pull assets out of them. Just to give you a sense of how long this took, I waited about 4 minutes for this right here to finish. Now, in Midjourney, looking at the separate videos can be overwhelming. What I do now to find the best assets to use for consistent characters is to work through each video one at a time and save only the best, most useful frames from each one. I do that by jumping over to the Organize tab. You can draw a rectangle to highlight all of the videos you want to pull assets from, and you can hold Shift to deselect some if you clicked on too many. And then I click Download right here at the bottom. What you get is a zip file that, once you extract them, becomes all of the local video files you might want to use. The easiest way to save frames now is to drag those files back into your browser as if they are like a tab. Google Chrome is what I use, and I know this works for a bunch of different browsers, but I don't think it's all of them. So what you want to see is when you have these video tabs open is a built-in player with more options than you normally get. The feature I care about is under this right-click menu, and it's Save Video Frame As. Now we can drag the timeline around to find the best images out of our videos. If we're close to the image we like, we can also use our arrow keys on the keyboard to move frame by frame to narrow in on the exact one you want. Once I find something I like, I can right-click on the video player and hit that button, Save Video Frame As, to save the still shot. As I do, I'm going to go through and split up what we save into 2 buckets. One bucket is for stills that already look great and are character accurate, and the other bucket is for ones that I like the composition or basic idea of, but still needs edits. Once I've chosen all the frames I like from a video, I am done with that video. I can delete it off my computer and out of the tab here. Doing that just helps me not get confused later on about what's a video, what's an asset, and what still needs work. Then it's as simple as repeating that process through all the videos I've created. This time lapse is about 10 minutes of selecting the best frame out of all the videos, and after it all, I saved 22 different images that I liked. Just to give you the highlights, from the orbiting videos, all 4 variations did pretty much exactly what I asked, but because they were so repetitive, I only needed to keep 5 generations for the 5 angles I thought would be useful. On one of the more side angle images, the face was squashed. I didn't really like how it looked, so I put it in the folder for Needs Edit, and I'll show you how I solve this kind of problem later. 2 of my requests were for walk cycles, if you remember, and as videos, they didn't turn out great. For the first one, I asked the video model to track Ela as he walks and keeps facing straight forward, and in the end, the videos looked more like dancing, but even so, there were some good frames that resembled walking well enough for me to save, So from these, I found just 3 that I thought were useful, natural poses. The next prompt from walking worked better, but I asked it to turn to the side and walk that way, and unfortunately, that simply didn't happen. I did save a few more, and it was a bunch of good walking poses, but not from the angle that I need. What I could do, and I'll actually do this now, is I could go back to my GPT and give it the 3/4 angle from one of the orbit shots I saved. So in the same chat, by asking for a new prompt with this as the starting frame, and for the character not to change direction at all and simply enter a walking pose, to lock in the angle, I set the reference as both the starting frame and the ending frame, and then with that request, these are the resulting videos, giving me a bunch more walking poses from this more useful angle too. And if I need the other angles, I could absolutely do the same thing with the other angles from my orbit that I had. But right now, my last request was to have Hila sit down in the grass and pick up a flower. Out of those, I got 5 pretty good assets, but the face problem is coming back. In 3 of them, he looks kind of bug-eyed or like his face got squished again. And as preparation to fix those, the next thing I want to do is generate videos for getting assets of his close-up face as well. So this process for headshots is exactly the same, just with the close-up reference we made instead of the full body one. I do like to start a new chat with my GPT whenever I switch from close-up to full body. I find that helps ChatGPT stay smarter and keep everything clean about how it's writing prompts. But it's the same exact process as before. I use my close-up reference, I paste the prompt, I ask for a few specific assets, and then I generate the videos. This lets me pull different expressions. I asked for an orbit, which gave me 5 different angles. I asked for Hila to look up and down, which gave me 4 more. And in the end, I saved another 20 close-up headshots from this set of videos. The other 2 assets, I just asked for specific expressions, one for a curious sense of wonder, and one for a more subtle excitement. And with all these frames saved, at this point, I had a great collection of assets that would help me build any particular pose I want. But my client's story is a little bit more complicated, and I'm not done. Before I work on finalizing these frames that I've saved, I need to prep a few more starting frames and a few more animations for some specific events and scenes that take place in my client's book. So, the story is about Hila receiving his first beekeeping suit and then learning all about what it takes to care for and collect honey from bees. And for the story to be complete, I need some frames where Hila receives the gift, opens it, and wears the new costume. My client provided me with this image he generated, so I know what the suit is supposed to look like, but obviously the art style isn't right for Hila, so I can't just put it on him using layers in the editor. It just doesn't match. So instead, we're going to use Nano Banana first to get a starting place for the costume. Here's the prompt I'm going to use. Pause it to read it if you want. And then for image 1, I can upload my reference costume. For image 2, I can upload an example honeycomb for Hila to hold. And for the final image, which Nano Banana treats as the base image that it's making edits to, I can put my original reference for Hila. And with 4 results, I got this one that looks pretty close. But the face is still wrong. This was too big a change and Nano Banana redrew it. So I need to fix that. I would also prefer the honeycomb to be bigger because Hila is supposed to be a kid and the honeycomb is supposed to be big in his hands. We can give ourselves a better base to work with and fix those things by getting an upscaled version of this image. We can do that right here on OpenArt. I like the precise upscale on the Ultra version. Then in the Midjourney Editor, we can drag that image into the canvas 2 times so it appears on separate layers. And because the image is upscaled, it's big enough to add a scaled up version of the honeycomb cropped in as a 3rd layer. So I can select and erase the background from the honeycomb. The reference image also has no frame on the side, since the honey is meant to be made naturally by the bees hanging from the top bar, so I can clean that up too at this point. And just like we added the scaled up honeycomb, I can also bring in a true reference of his face at this point. I can take this and put it where his head is, and simple enough to erase out the parts that don't really fit into the image, and then let Midjourney fill in the details. With a couple rounds like this of erasing and cleaning up, eventually I have a really good character-accurate version of this costume that is exactly how I want it to look. The only problem is that I lost the effect of netting in front of his face, the thing that made it darker from the original Nano Banana image. But that's easy enough, right? We have both tools. I'm going to take this back to Nano Banana, which is going to work super well when the edit is more fundamental, but also relatively small. We want to change as little as possible when we're using Nano Banana for the editing. So in this case, I ask it to add a semi-transparent net onto my character's face while doing nothing else. And voila! The result is very, very clean. I could do the same thing that we did at the beginning to get another close-up version of this change too, and Nano Banana happily creates a zoomed-in, high-resolution close-up with the beekeeping hat on. We're in a really good place to animate both of these as well, but before I do and pull the results out, I'm going to use Nano Banana on a few more poses. I want to combine our starting pose with this image of a tied-up package I created in Midjourney, and just ask for a pose of Ela holding it. That way we can animate him interacting with his gift. And lastly, I need scenes of him in different lighting conditions, specifically something that's more nighttime. And for that, I'll just upload the original full body and ask for it on a black background instead. The darker background makes the darker lighting much more natural, and so if I also request that in my prompt to Nano Banana, the lighting of the character should actually look like nighttime in a way that it's going to actually listen to. And here's the prompt I wrote for that, and my result. I can send almost exactly the same prompt to get a close-up version of this darker image, which looks like this. And now, with all these starting frames, I think you get the idea of how I can make a bunch of videos and pull a bunch of assets from them and really start to have a lot of diversity in the types of images I have of this one single character. Sure, I can get some orbits or walk cycles, but there's also some clever things we can do when we mix and match starting frames and ending frames. For one scene, I need Ela actually putting on the bee suit, so I can use my original reference as a starting frame and the bee suit full body shot as an ending frame to get this video, which creates these frames of all that transition while he's putting it on. These are easy enough to clean up in the editor and make them make a little bit more sense. And then from that, I can take this as an ending frame and this shot holding the package as a starting frame, and we can watch as my character opens up the package to discover his bee suit inside. Really perfect. I can also get a gradient of different lighting conditions with this as a starting frame and my original reference as an ending frame. So out of another 10 video prompts that I've run, I ended up saving 151 different images of Ela, and 23 of those fell into my pile of needs edits. So with almost all of my assets, 90% of the way there, we have just a few more things to do. Fix the images that aren't perfect, and then remove the backgrounds so that these are easy to drag and drop as assets later in the project when I'm trying to actually build scenes. For the first part, fixing the images, I'm going to streamline this a bit using my tool ImageRag. On ImageRag, I can upload the 23 problem images. Having these on ImageRag lets me build stitched collections that make the Midjourney editor a lot more character accurate while I'm editing. That's because when I take one of these and I erase parts of Ela's face on these canvases, Midjourney knows how they're supposed to look by seeing the other faces within the canvas as it's generating. My prompt in Midjourney can be pretty simple. I just say, side-by-side illustrations of the same exact boy in different poses, costumes, or lighting conditions. And because the context of the rest of the image is the driver for our fix, the result is quickly very, very clean. I can repeat that process with quick edits on each of my stitched collections, and then, because Midjourney's canvases aren't super high resolution, I can upscale the result to get full quality assets. On my page, I point you to this free utility by Adobe to remove backgrounds, but just because I have so many to do, I think I'll be a little bit faster in Photoshop. Basically, I quickly set up every asset individually on its own layer, and then go through one by one and hit this remove background button. I go through that for every single one, and now I have a high quality asset for every pose I could possibly need for this character throughout my entire story. And I have a lot of flexibility when I build scenes later on and create the story exactly how I want it to look. If you enjoyed this video but want to understand how the entire process fits together, I highly recommend you watch this video next. Also, if it's out already while you're watching this, I'll link to the next video in this storybook series in case you want to follow along. Before I go, I do want to give a special thanks to Conrad, who was the first viewer to sign up for the Ultra membership on ImageRag. I really appreciate it. And I appreciate everyone who has signed up for and uses my tool. That subscription is really the best way to support me and what I do. You're all amazing. All right, Thank you so much for watching, and I'll see you in the next one.